YouTube. I'm Hellhound, and thank you for watching my Midnight Spook show. Figured to go ahead and review Children of the Corn. Finally, the time has come to review this movie. I've been getting a lot of requests for this one, and it's probably like one of the very few really well-known horror franchises that I haven't talked about yet. So, well, let's get right down to it. And yeah, what a long franchise it is. I mean, now, when people talk about horror films, when you have like a discussion about horror films, get a group of people you talk together, after you talk for a while, Children of the Corn is likely one of the movies you're going to mention. It's likely going to get brought up in any horror discussion, at least eventually. And I'm sure you have memories going in the video store and going in the horror section and seeing this and its various sequels. Might have been one of the very first horror series that you noticed. Because yeah, there's the original Children of the Corn, then we had Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice. This is probably my favorite sequel. We had Children of the Corn 3, Urban Harvest, which had Daniel Cherney, who plays a really good evil child. See Demonic Toys for more info on that. Also Children of the Corn 4, The Gathering. Children of the Corn 5, Fields of Terror. We had Children of the Corn 666, Isaac's Return, which saw the return of John Franklin as Isaac. And Children of the Corn Revelation. Jeez, I can't believe they made this many. When the series wasn't really that strong to begin with, but I'll get to that in a minute. There's also a remake of Children of the Corn, and there's also Children of the Corn Genesis, which is another sequel that I do not own. There was also Disciples of the Crow, which is a short film based on the same story. It comes from a Stephen King story. I believe this was in his anthology novel, Night Shift. Children of the Corn is one of the stories. I might have went by Disciples of the Crow in that too. I don't know. I don't remember if I read the story or not. If I did, it was a long time ago. But anyway, we're just talking about the movie. The original 1984 film, directed by Fritz Kirsch and starring Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton. Now, yeah, Peter Horton, getting tongue-tied already, and Linda Hamilton, who, is best known for Terminator 1 and 2, Sarah Connor. Yeah, that's right. The Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton. They're a young couple, and they get deserted in a small Nebraska town, which has, it's a typical Nebraska, cornfields, farmland everywhere, like a small little southern town. And they discover that all the town's adults have been slaughtered by a mysterious cult of evil children led by Isaac, played by John Franklin, and Malachi, played by Courtney Gaines. Both of them are really, really creepy and very threatening, very menacing kids. Yeah, the children are like kind of a religious cult, a very twisted one. And the opening scene where they murder all the adults in the town is pretty gruesome and pretty graphic. It's probably the most brutal scene in the movie, and like, I don't know, it was a very strong opening in my opinion, and I feel like they never really, it never really got its, they never really capitalized on that. It never really had a payoff, because I think the movie opened really well, but then after that, the rest of the movie didn't really live up to that awesome prologue. But anyway, yeah, that's the premise. Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton are stranded in a town with a bunch of murderous kids who are, again, they worship He Who Walks Behind the Rose, mysterious deity that lives in the cornfield. There's a lot of really, really good eerie, it's a very eerie setting, location, has great tone, has a great mood, great atmosphere, great scenery. The cornfield's really creepy. The stalk and suspense scenes are done pretty well. I think the acting by the kids is pretty good, considering. Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton are good. They're believable as the couple who, just want to get out. But I feel like, I don't know, this movie, it's good. It's a great premise. The execution isn't as good as it could have been. It's not as disturbing and shocking as it sounds. It's definitely a horrifying premise, but I feel like, this movie isn't all what it could have been. I still think it's good. I even go so far to say it's I want to say great, but I feel like it's bogged down by a lot of elements. Again, the execution wasn't what it could have been, and I feel like this movie's kind of a big missed opportunity. Again, a great storyline, some really creepy visuals, some pretty bloody, gory, graphic scenes, more so than what you'd more so than what you'd expect from this kind of film, anyway. Sorry. But still, I feel like it wasn't milked quite enough. Now, yeah, as I said, John Franklin and Courtney Gaines are really good as the leaders of the evil, murderous cult of kids. John Franklin was actually 25 when he made this, and he's playing Isaac, who's supposed to be like a young kid, probably like a teenager. I would think like early teens at least, or maybe preteens. I think the movie mentions his age, but I can't remember for the life of me. It's been kind of a while since I watched this. And Courtney Gaines is great as Malachi. They both play good villains. A lot of their dialogue, though, I have to say, is cringeworthy, and it gets a little old and tiresome after a while. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like that there's like certain scenes are way too long and very slow paced, and I feel like there's not a lot of payoff. There's a lot of build up and not a lot of following up on it. In this movie, and again, yeah, it's a lot of missed opportunity. There's a lot of cliches. There's a lot of horrendous lines and some kind of bad acting, and yeah, a lot of cliches. There's a psychic girl who it's just unneeded. There's really stupid decisions. The main characters make some really dumb moves. Like it's just like really. Like, it hit the point where I was rolling my eyes way too much and kind of cringing. Now, I know this movie is a classic. It's a very well-known horror movie. A lot of people know about it. A lot of people talk about it. And I don't hate it. You know, obviously, I said it was good. And I'm being a little overly critical. I just think that it's like, I don't know. I think that could have been so much better. It's a great Stephen King story. We all know Stephen King's the master of horror. He can pretty much do no wrong, though he does kind of get excessive and a little over the top sometimes. This movie's no exception. A lot of the acting, a lot of the lines, a lot of the delivery is too over the top. Sometimes John Franklin comes off a little too Shakespearean for my taste. I still think he's a good actor. I still think he's the highlight of this movie. I think he carries it pretty well as the evil and slightly demonic Isaac. All the talk of he who walks behind the rose is pretty creepy and unsettling. And again, that opening murder of all the adults, I can't praise that enough. That was definitely the best part of the movie, and I think it was really it made the rest of the movie kind of a letdown. So maybe it was maybe it was a little too good. But yeah, this movie definitely has a strong points, but there are a lot of weak elements that really kind of hinder my enjoyment of it on the whole. So yeah, it could have been a lot better. It has a lot of wasted potential, but again, those good elements are crucial, and what it does well, it does very well. But what it gets wrong, it does get very wrong too. So I have to be fair. I'm giving this a very. I'm not using my nostalgia goggles on this one. I'm not using any. I'm not I'm giving a totally unbiased review, a totally subjective, unbiased review here. Or objective, sorry. But yeah, will the two adults, with Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton, become the next sacrifices to he who walks behind the rose? There's another creepy scene of a police officer who's been crucified. You see his decaying corpse a lot. I think that was very creepy. I think there's a lot of creepy moments that didn't go long enough and just made way for more like cringy dialogue and more over the top acting and more stupid decisions and long, overly boring and dull pacing and stalk sequences. Again, the cornfield is really creepy, but corn itself isn't really scary. And I think the movie thinks that corn, like ears of corn, is scarier than it really is. I think the 1990 It miniseries kind of did the same thing with balloons. But yeah, I will say it's still pretty eerie. It's still a pretty very creepy movie. There's a lot of unsettling, slightly shocking scenes. It's not as disturbing as it could be, and when you read about the movie or somebody tells you about it, it sounds a lot scary. And like when I first heard about the premise and some of the things that went down, that I finally saw the movie, I thought, yeah, it wasn't as terrifying as I thought. As it sounded. It sounds a lot scarier on paper than the actual delivery that you get, than the actual movie actually. And I do think the movie does kind of fail on that level. But again, okay, I think I talked about the bad things enough. Let's get to the good things. Again, as I said, John Franklin as Isaac. I can't praise his performance enough. He does pretty good, despite some really silly dialogue and some really cringeworthy, over-the-top moments. Courtney Gaines as Malachi is really creepy. He's kind of an older kid. He's the ginger with the long red hair. By the way, Courtney Gaines, watch the movie King Cobra. It came out in the late 90s. It's a terrible movie. Just one of those giant snake movies. Very bad movie. Very stupid. The snake puppet is really ridiculous looking. It's right up there with like Python and Anaconda. The giant snake things were all the rage at that time. But King Cobra, Courtney Gaines actually plays a scientist at the beginning of the movie. He's only in it for like maybe 10 or 15 minutes at the very beginning in the prologue. And it's one of the most hilarious performances I've ever seen. He was just awesome in that. I remember I was like, that's the kid from Children of the Corn. I was like, that's freaking Malachi from Children of the Corn playing an over-the-top deranged scientist. And like the rest of the movie is crap, but you got to see it. Check out King Cobra. I don't even know if it's available on DVD. Order the VHS just for that one scene. I guarantee it'll be well worth your time. And if not, I will apologize to you in person if it's not one of the funniest things you ever saw. It's just hysterical. But anyway, I just had to mention that. Every time I think of Courtney Gaines, I have to talk about King Cobra and his his brief but not at all subtle role in that movie. But anyway, back to the movie. He does a good job in this too, despite some pretty goofy dialogue too, some over the top moments. I like how him and Isaac kind of battle for power, like kind of towards the end. It's a pretty good climax too. The special effects go a little bit stupid and goes a little over the top of some like animated moments, but and they don't really fully show He Who Walks Behind the Rose. But I think that's I think what they do with it is pretty good and clever. I won't give it away, but I think it's a pretty good way to close the movie, to the climax, the finale. I think is pretty well done. It's pretty good payoff, I guess, overall. But then again, as I said earlier, there's a lot of things that were built up and didn't really go anywhere, not in the direction I wanted anyway. But yeah, it's not a bad movie. It's not terrible. I said it is good. It's a good horror movie. It's a well-known horror classic. I still recommend you see it, for sure. I still highly suggest you see this movie if you're a horror fan, if you haven't already. If you're not a horror fan, I think this movie is still a must-see. For the premise alone and some of the acting from the kids, and Peter Horton and Linda Hamilton, it's definitely worth seeing. It's definitely a worthy entry to the horror genre. I think the horror genre is better because of this movie. I'm glad that this is part of the long history of cult cinema. But again, yeah, there are some pretty bad elements that do definitely drag it down, and it definitely isn't what it could have been. Isn't all it could have been. But again, I still recommend it. And yeah, the sequels, I'd recommend you see Children of the Corn 2, The Final Sacrifice, and maybe 3. The rest kind of range from mediocre to just plain unwatchable. But we'll get to that eventually. Maybe I'll review the sequels in due time. Not anytime soon, though, because I want to focus on some other things before I talk even more about Children of the Corn. But yeah, the original is definitely the best. And there's definitely some potential here. There's definitely, I'd say there's definitely a masterpiece of a movie shining through. There's a really, really good gem hidden in here somewhere. And I think when it does shine or does come out, it does its job really well. Again, it just didn't go as far as it could have, and the over-the-top moments aren't the right moments that should have been over the top. There's other moments that would have benefited more from that type of thing. Yeah, the directing style by Fritz Kirsch is pretty good. Again, most of the acting's good aside from some some poorly written lines. But yeah, the opening murder, the creepy kids. There's a lot of scenes where the kids are like circling around some adults, in the cornfield stuff, which is pretty suspenseful and pretty ominous. So I definitely say see it. Children of the Corn from 1984, definitely a worthy installment to the horror genre. It's definitely a horror classic, but again, it's definitely not all that it could have been. And I heard that short film, Disciples of the Crow, adapts Stephen King's short story a lot better. I don't know if that's true or not because I haven't seen it, so I can't comment. But as soon as I do, I'll let you guys know. You were the first to know what I think of that. Once again, Children of the Corn. Got a lot of requests, and now I've finally done it. Hope you guys liked my review. And sorry if I was being a little too harsh on this movie, but I just think that when a movie has a lot of potential, I'm going to be a little rough on it because I want that potential to be fully realized. I want that vision to come through completely, instead of being watered down and wasted on other, cliches and tropes that are just become kind of tired. This is one of the better evil kids movies. I don't really like killer children all that well, but this movie does do that element well. Again, aside from my previous gripes that I've already mentioned several times in this video. Now, yeah, it probably is one of the better evil kid movies, and I think it does that element fit good enough. It's definitely it passes. It passes the test. So yeah, as far as evil kid movies go, this is probably one of the better ones. But again, lot of wasted potential here. All right, guys, I'm Hellhound. Hope I didn't leave anything out. Let me know what you think of Children of the Corn in the comments below, and I'm going to remind you once again my Q&A video coming up. I've already got a lot of questions, and but I want as many as possible. I'm going to go ahead and say the cutoff date will be. Let's go ahead and say November 5th. That'll be the deadline. So if you haven't submitted your question to November 5th, it could be anything. Except I'm not going to reveal my real name or my age or location or anything like that. Nothing too personal. But as for opinions on horror films and whatever, yeah, go ahead and I'm an open book when it comes to that. So lots of opinions. So yeah, go ahead and submit your question if you haven't already. Check out my last video, Hellhound's Loathsome Lore 9, for more info on that. And I'll see you in my upcoming Q&A video. So yeah, again, the deadline will be November 5th, so try to get your question in by then. But if I don't get to your question, don't worry, I'll do another Q&A video sometime in the future. So, but look forward to that. I'll probably be doing it on either the 5th or the 6th. So, and I might do some more reviews before then. I don't know, but all right, guys, check out Children of the Corn. I think you'll like it. You're not going to be disappointed. Overall, I think you'll enjoy it. But again, know that there are some elements that could have been done a lot better and milked a little more. All right, guys. Until next time.